what's going to happen. It's telling you the order that it took place in. And it said, after the day has gone dark, the moon will be the color of blood. Listen. Though at 9 o'clock that night the moon rose to the full, it had not the least effect in dispelling the death-like shadows. After midnight the darkness disappeared, and the moon, when first visible, had the appearance of blood. Just exactly as God said it would be. It took place. And then it said, the earthquake, the day would go dark, the moon would be the color of blood, and then the scripture says the stars would fall from heaven. November the 13th, 1833. Never been a day like that, folks, in which the stars fell from heaven. Listen to this. Its sublimity and awful beauty still lingers in many minds. Never did rain fall much thicker than the meters fell towards the earth. East, west, north, south, it was the same. In a word, the whole heavens seemed in motion. Now, can you just imagine walking out here tonight and walk out there, and every way that you turned, east, west, north, south, every way you turned, stars were falling as thick as rain. What would you think? I'll tell you what they thought back then. You can read accounts where men, grown men, fell on the ground and started crying because they thought the day of judgment was there, that God was coming. It was a horrible time because nothing like it had been before. Listen as it continues to describe it. No language, indeed, can come up to the splendor of that magnificent display. No one who did not witness it can form any adequate conception of its glory. And I pick up these where people today try to give some explanation for that. Let me tell you something, dear friend. They weren't there. You read the account of the people that were there, and boy, I can tell you right now, there hadn't been anything like that. You and I go out here and we see a few falling stars, but we never have seen it when it fell as thick as rain in every way that you wanted to look. It seemed as if the whole heavens had congregated to one point near the zenith and were simultaneously shooting forth with the velocity of lightning to every part of the horizon, and yet they were not exhausted. Thousands swiftly followed in the track of thousands, as if created for the occasion. And thus, exactly as the scripture said, the stars fell from heaven. These are signs, folks, that God gave to tell you and I that we're down to a period called the time of the end. That's the time in which you and I are living today. That began 1798. And since that time, we have been living in the time of the end. That's what the scripture tells us. And therefore, you're not living like people have all down through the past ages. You're living in a special period of time, the time of the end, the time when all this is going to come to a climax and Jesus Christ is going to come back. That's the time that you're living in. And you and I need to understand that. The scripture is very, very clear about making that point so that we understand where we are. But you, Daniel, shut up the words, seal the book until the what? The time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. He said, Daniel, shut up the words, seal the book until the time of the end. And you and I are living in the time of the end, the time when Christ will come back. Are you ready? That's what you and I have to ask ourselves. Are you ready for Christ to come back? Are you prepared for His coming? We need to be. We need to be watching, waiting, looking for the coming of Jesus Christ. We're right down at the end of time. Once you watch this, immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened. Did it happen? Exactly. That tribulation came down to the end. There all of a sudden, the sun was darkened. The moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from heaven. The powers of heaven will be shaken, telling us exactly what's going to happen. All that took place after 1798. Now I want you to look at something very carefully. That's Matthew 24, verse 29. Okay? Look at verse 30. That's the very next verse. This is Christ's own words, folks. Listen to verse 30. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven. And then all the tribes of the earth will mourn. And they'll see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Do you follow what I'm trying to tell you? There's nothing. Christ didn't give anything in between those two verses. You follow me? In other words, He's saying, this is the things that's going to happen, and after that, the next thing will be the coming of Jesus Christ. He didn't say there's going to be a lot of the other things. He said the next thing would be the coming of Christ. So you and I need to understand that the next thing we're going to look for will be the coming of Jesus Christ. That we have to be looking, waiting, watching for the coming of the Lord. What I mustn't permit to happen, folks, is I mustn't permit myself not to be ready. I've got to be ready for the coming of the Lord. If I miss it, I'm in trouble. Gordon and Donna and myself, we were invited to speak at a convention up in Sacramento. And we had been holding meetings one right after another and hadn't had any time off. And I told them, I said, let's fly up to Seattle and take the Clipper across over to Victoria and take a couple days and go out to the Bushard Gardens and see the gardens there and just take a couple days off. And so we decided we would do that. Gordon is kind of a train buff, and so we decided we would do that. Then we would come back, spend a day sightseeing in Seattle, and then we would catch the train back to Sacramento and be there in time for our appointment. That was our intentions. And so we flew over to Seattle, got the Clipper, went over to Victoria, and went out and looked at the Bushard Gardens and had a nice time there. Took the Clipper back and got us a hotel there in Seattle. And the next morning when we got up, we went down and had breakfast. And I told Gordon and Donna, I said, I really would just like to go up to my room and just have a little time just for reading and meditation and prayer. And I said, when I'm through, well, I'll let you know and we'll go out and sightseeing. So I did. I went back up the room and read and so forth. And when I finished, I had everything packed up and I went down, knocked on their room and told them I was ready to go. And I said to them, I said, I don't want to lug this suitcase around all day. I said, I just really don't want to lug it around. I said, do you think they would let us check it in early at the train station? And they said, maybe so. So I called up the